Well, welcome everybody. If you are looking to be joining the Vibe Coding for Marketers, you are in the right place. Such a pleasure to have you here with us today. And I am so excited to have Matt with us today. I ran into Matt on a local meetup and we were talking about vibe coding. And within 5 minutes, I knew that Matt knew a whole heck of a lot more than I did. And I said, "Hey, Matt, would you be willing to join me on my next meetup?" And he agreed to. So, Matt, such a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Quick shout out. This is brought to you, the meetup's brought to you by Hyper Adaptive Solutions. That is me. You can find the vibe coded website at hyperadaptive.solutions. And I would encourage you to hit that not only because it is the sponsor of this meetup, but I think it's a good example to see what you can do with vibe coding. And it looks a little bit different than some of the other vibe coding websites that I've seen out there. So we are your partner in AI integration, things like use cases, training, tool selection, process optimization, and integration support. So feel free to reach out to us via the contact form there uh, if if you're interested in any of those services. And to get us started, we have a poll. I'd like to hear in the chat either what have you vibe coded lately, or oh gosh, we don't have anything going in the chat. Um, what have you vibe coded lately, or what would you like to vibe code? And I'll give you a minute to populate that in the chat, and it helps me to know that you're here, you're awake. Matt's in the chat. Again, we like to run this as a networking event, so would really just encourage you to tune in as much as your life is allowing to right now. Just a demo site using Lovable. Thanks for that, Tom. And just again get to know each other, learn a little bit, and connect with each other. And just for future references, I am not allowing note takers into the sessions, and would just encourage you, if you can't make the session, catch the video on follow up. So that's a heads up for anybody who's here. All right, so we've got mobile and web apps would be cool, using Lovable and Bolt. We're new to experiment with design for apps. Love seeing all of those creative use cases. So thank you for dropping those in the chat. We've got another one, totally unfamiliar with vibe coding. All right, love that too. Okay, so what we're going to cover today, what is vibe coding? So if you don't even know, then you're in the right place. What are some vibe coding tools? Matt's going to do a great demo for us, and then we'll have some Q&A. I'm labeling this as an advanced beginner because we're not going to go over the basics of AI and what it is and tools and all of that. So that's where we're at today. Panelist Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a fractional product person. I've been working in SaaS products, deep tech, MarTech for the past decade plus. I was a software engineer before that. Actually, had stopped writing code. And then last Thanksgiving, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, have you seen Cursor? It's really cool." And I jumped in and I've had maybe 7 total days since Thanksgiving last year where I haven't actually like jumped in and done something with AI. And it's been kind of game changing for me because it built a ton of different things.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm just seeing in the chat, we've got a couple people who are looking for data use cases.
Mhm.
So if we could touch on those, then that's also welcome.
Cool.
All right. And I'm Melissa Reeve. I'm the co-founder. It says marketingfrontier.ai. I also run that website, so marketingfrontier.ai, as well as hyperadaptive.solutions. Um, so what is vibe coding? Vibe coding is a way to turn your ideas into sites or apps or even code with natural language. So you can just literally tell the computer what to do. And I remember hearing from one of the originators of that term, and I'm already like vibing, and he was talking about, yeah, he was an engineer for Tesla. And he was talking about how, yeah, I just kind of get into the vibe of the code and what I'm trying to do. And I think he even had his headphones and he was like, I turn on some music and I tell the computer what to do, and we're just going back and forth. So that's the origin of the term vibe coding, literally the vibe. And again, no coding required. I will say every function like accounting and marketing has its own terminology. Software engineering is no different. And so I do think for me, one of the challenges of vibe coding is knowing certain terms like deployment. And so maybe Matt's nodding. And so maybe Matt, as you're talking through the vibe coding, you can drop little translations of these terms
Mhm.
in for our marketing audience.
Yeah, and if I say anything that that you guys have questions on, throw it in the chat. Melissa, cut in, let me know. So that because every once in a while I kind of get excited and forget to explain all the details. So
Love it. Yeah. No silly questions here.
right.
So, what does vibe coding do? It does more than generate the code. And that was an aha moment for me, is that I could tell it to make like a website for a coffee shop, and it would actually, it kind of knows what needs to go on a website for a coffee shop. You have to think about AI as the magic genie that knows everything about that is on the internet. And so you think about, so how many coffee shop websites are there? It kind of knows what a coffee shop website looks like and what should be on it. So it can just generate the content, generate the design, and generate the code for you. And then there's ways to tweak that. So vibe coding is really much more than code, and how it can help marketers. So fast launch. I just recently wrote about a use case where I was able to build and deploy a landing page for a marketing client in short order, and having that ability to not only write the structure of the page in a wireframe, but actually have them visualize that was really, really powerful. Rapidly prototyping, Matt, you are in um, sorry, Matt, you're in product, and so prototyping designs and being able to
Yep.
visualize that incredibly powerful. We have a couple people in the chat who said that they were working with data, and so using vibe coding to work with data also very powerful for marketing, and to be able to give real examples. And feel free again to drop in the chat if there are any other ways that you could see vibe coding being very powerful for marketers. And that way we'll learn from each other and help each other out. Okay, live demo time. Like we're going to get right into it. So vibe coding for marketing analytics. Absolutely. Now this is Matt, where I am handing it over to you.
All right. So we decided we're gonna actually have Melissa act like she's a client of mine, and we're going to, ask some questions, figure out what we want to build. So I know, Melissa, you mentioned that we wanted to maybe use like a neutral example, somebody that's not actually one of our clients. Can you
Mhm.
remind me who that was that you wanted to use?
Yeah, so I thought that we could do in somebody who's selling some coaching and online training.
Okay. So coaching and online training.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna take some notes real quick and then I'll show you what I did. So
Okay.
I'm gonna do this like normal interview process with you first.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do like a landing page for a webinar. Is that right?
Yeah, so let's do a landing page for a webinar. And I do have this slide up. And maybe while I've got it up, before we move into interview, you could just talk to, or do you want to do this after the demo?
Um, yeah, we can do this real quick. So
Okay.
okay. So if you want to see the tools that I'm using, the QR code is for that. And there are some affiliate links there. I use a lot of tools that have affiliates, so feel free to actually follow the link or go directly to the website. I just share it just in case. It tells you exactly what you get. But typically, I am using one of a couple of tools depending on what the project is going to be. So in this case, I'm actually going to use ChatGPT and I'm going to use Bolt. Um, those are, ChatGPT, everybody knows, but if you have a client that you're working with quite a bit, or for the company that you work for, you can actually, if you pay $20 a month, you can get projects, and you can keep each of the chats that you have for that project in a folder basically. And ChatGPT will actually keep the context of everything you've talked about. You can even go back and create a new chat and go, give me a summary of everything we've talked about for this project. And it will be able to do that and use that context from all of the different conversations, which is really nice. So even for my personal website, I have a project, and I'll use that to when I write a blog post, I'll ask ChatGPT sometimes to make an image for me for the header image, and it'll match the designs that we've used previously, which is really nice. Um, Manus is great if you are it's manus.im. If you want to do deep research or you want to like put together a ton of information. So if you're doing like a competitive analysis, I had it do something the other day where I asked it to take a project I was looking at for a customer and compare it to the other products out there that could do the same thing that were not custom built. And it was able to go and give me a table. It gave me an unopinionated comparison of each of the products, how much it would cost, who you'd have to hire, all of that. It's really cool what it can do. Gemini is a Google product. It can do a lot of the same stuff that the other tools can use, and they're coming out with new products, it seems like every day. Even before we started, I was telling Melissa about AI Studio.Google, which I believe uses Gemini behind the scenes. You can actually screen share and chat with it when you're using a new tool and ask it, like, hey, how do I put a border on this? Or how do I make this video do this thing that I saw some creator do? And it'll say, click this menu, click that option, and tell you exactly how to do it. For building, Bolt.new is a great intro level tool, which we'll use today. It's really nice at creating UIs and getting you set up for exactly what you need. Melissa, you talked about prototyping. I've actually used Bolt to create an entire mock UI for a project that I then pitched and got a contract for building out the rest of the product. And it was able to make the UI completely interactive without building out any of the backend. So no database, no storage, just a click through UI. So I didn't even have to design it. And it was able to be like, I can take that and wire it up right away. Replit and Lovable, they tend to be a little bit more advanced. I actually put these in the wrong order. I would say Bolt, Lovable, then Replit for how advanced each tool is. I found a ton of people really like Lovable. I have a lot of people that I go to meetups with and things like that praise Lovable very highly. Replit is going to be more developer oriented, but you can still use it for all the things that we're talking about today.
Nice. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the interview.
Okay. So, is there a website that you want it to look like? Do you have a website that you like or a design, maybe some colors, something like that you would like the landing page to look like?
Yeah, so I was thinking that, my training and coaching business is all about wall Pilates. And because as a middle-aged woman, that shows up in my feed a lot. So I'm going to drop into the chat the website, the Wall Pilates uh, site that I thought was clean and was really good. And we're going to do a 30-minute intro to Wall Pilates webinar for free. Just to give some folks a sense of what this Wall Pilates is all about.
Cool. Okay. So, and you said a 30-minute um,
Mhm.
intro webinar about
Yeah,
wall Pilates. And you said your target audience is, you said middle-aged
yeah,
women?
middle-aged women.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, is there typically for like a webinar, I will like stop registrations at some point before the webinar starts. Do you have a timeline that you want for that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but for the sake of this, let's say 24 hours before the webinar starts.
Okay. And then Do you have an idea of like what you want the title to be or any like call to action copy for the page, or do we want to see what we come up with?
Let's see what the system comes up with.
Okay. And then
It,
what system are you like? Do you have a back office system that you integrate your contacts with,
so
Klaviyo or something like that?
yeah, so I am on Zoom and HubSpot.
Okay. Any fields that you want to capture from people?
Yeah, I think just first name, and I probably don't even need last name, just first name and email, and maybe just their level of experience. Like, are they a beginner at wall Pilates? Have they done it before?
Cool. Okay. So now I'm going to share my screen. I'll show you what I put together. And it is like, I want to be straightforward here. It is this easy.
How
So
presenting help you?
we did that interview and I literally typed what we were talking about. So I want to create a webinar sign up form landing page with Bolt.new, as I discussed. Um, we're doing this for a coach who does training and coaching on wall Pilates. I really like the site. So if we could use some design elements, colors, look and feel from that site, that'd be great. It's going to be a 30-minute intro. We want to stop registrations 24 hours before. We're going to use Zoom and HubSpot, and this is what we're going to capture. We want to, let's see, can you make um, suggestions for and I'm leaving that spelling mistake there because the UI or the AI does not care. And actually, I've been seeing a lot of posts about how it doesn't care about punctuation as well. Let's see, can you make suggestions for the CTA and page copy?
Mhm.
Um,
And you're putting this into ChatGPT, and do
this
you
is in
care about
ChatGPT.
the model at all, or just
Um,
whatever model?
I honestly, I've never played with the models too much. I just use whatever comes up first.
Okay.
I'm kind of the worst. There's a lot of people that are very opinionated about the models. I think it just defaults to whatever the newest one is for me on this account. And so that's what I
Mhm.
use. And then I go. One thing I
Yeah.
want to call out at the end of this is that I always ask questions, and I ask questions to get the AI to ask me questions. Part of the
Mhm.
reason why is because it's going to use its corpus of information and it will, if you don't ask it to ask you questions, it will fill in blanks for you. And sometimes it's
Mhm.
great. Sometimes you're like, where the hell did that come from? And so I like to have it ask me a couple of questions first, so that because it knows where its holes are in what I gave it. And
Nice.
so that will give me more information. So, like, look, we didn't say when the webinar is going to be, right? That's
Mhm.
pretty important. So, when will the webinar be?
So the webinar will be, I don't have a calendar in front of me. Let's just say June 30th,
Okay. At what time?
at 11 a.m. Mountain
Mountain
Central
time.
Time or Mountain Standard Time. Yeah.
Okay. And then, yeah, we're just going to go through this. So, Zoom registration link, or are we going to embed Zoom into HubSpot?
Zoom registration syncing.
Okay. And so like sometimes if you want, you can label these if you want, like with the same numbers, or you can just give it the answers and it will help. So
Mm,
Zoom registration syncing. Do you want a downloadable calendar invite? Or
why
you can,
not, right?
okay,
That'd be cool.
yeah. Will you also be sending, this isn't asking this, but will you be sending an email with that link in it as well?
That would be nice. Yeah, since we're
Do you want
collecting.
do you want this site to do that, or do you want HubSpot to do that?
I think I want the site to do it.
Okay.
No, actually, let's do HubSpot. I'm trying to think. So many questions.
Yeah. But this is the thing, right? Like these are the
Yeah.
things that we end up having to, when we go build these things out, we have to think of these anyway. And
Yeah.
so what's nice is that rather than like building this out and then having somebody go, "Oh, did you think about this?" By
Right.
asking the AI to ask me questions, we fill in these blanks. If you're
Mhm.
consulting, this is the name of the game right here. It
Yeah,
saves me so many times on stuff that I just like little details that I forget.
for
Uh,
sure. And this is the back and forth that kills us all, right? And
yep.
makes the simple landing page take weeks.
Well, and it also like it undermines your expertise with your client. They get
Mhm.
frustrated, you get frustrated, you're doing emails back and forth or tons of meetings. And if you can do this it's just so much faster.
Hmm.
Okay, so we want to save the form submissions in HubSpot.
Hmm.
Okay. And you can do things like same form submits instead of writing the whole word out. It's totally okay. Um, and then I assume you can export from HubSpot. So I'm
Yeah.
not an expert in HubSpot, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want the form to disappear or be replaced 24 hours before the webinar?
Like
Like,
replace with registration closed.
yeah, okay. I'm going to throw a loop in here and say, let's put a notify me about the next opportunity form in its
Mm-hmm.
place so we can capture anyone who comes late. So now you're turning your old landing page into, feeding the next one.
Yeah. And we have a request to make the font larger.
Oh,
Oh, no.
yeah, yeah. Let's do that.
Hey, look at that. Thanks,
Um,
thanks, Daisy.
yeah, thank you. I'm on a 32-inch monitor, so I don't notice when my font's very small. Okay, and then I'm just gonna steal this. So and I always say please because if the robots come for me, I want to say I was being polite. Okay. So and then like here, we got a headline already. Here's some, description.
Uh-huh.
Is that good for you? Are you fine with that?
Yeah, can we put a tone in there?
Yeah.
So let's make the tone conversational and warm
Okay.
with a touch of light humor.
Awesome. Let's update the copy tone. Perfect. Are there any other changes that you would want in this copy, just real quick?
Uh, no, I mean, I think that's good. I'd say, I don't know if it'll do it, but well, I was about to say avoid overuse of bulleted lists, as we all know,
Okay.
ChatGPT is wont to do that. But I have noticed the vibe coding sites are pretty good about creating that balance just because they're experts at UX.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they kind of override ChatGPT's desire
Yeah.
to
Well,
make
and what's
everything.
weird is that like ChatGPT actually gives you the option to set preferences.
Hmm.
And I have specifically told it no more emojis, no more horizontal lines in content, and it still does it.
Yeah.
It's over indexing there. Okay, what would you like your CTA button to say?
Sign up or register, I guess, register.
Okay. Let's do that. And then, okay. So it's going to give me some ideas here for the form logic, for countdown logic, all of that. We're going to give it this feedback and sort of ignore this for a second because
Okay.
it will go and it'll update that. So, because it knows that we're trying to get to a goal. So you don't have to like answer every single thing. And some of the things that we just gave it will override what we just did.
And did you like I noticed it zoned in on Bolt. Did you tell it you were using Bolt or does
I
it just
did.
know it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So at the very first, I said I want to create this with a landing page with
Okay. Bolt.new.
the trick is here, you actually could use ChatGPT to do this.
Yeah.
It's just not nearly as nice because Bolt.new is going to do it in a code editor with a file folder system,
Mhm.
where ChatGPT is going to give you a series of files that you have to then download and create yourself. And there's some shortcuts that you get with tools like Bolt or Replit or Lovable. Uh,
Mhm.
Okay, so we're back now, and it's going to tell us all the things that it's going to do. Um, Here's the Bolt prompt. Let's see, build a responsive mobile-friendly landing page. As a developer, I can tell you that like doing that yourself is a pain. That's the reason I stopped cutting websites, 15 years ago. And then here's everything that we asked for. So we can actually take this and drop it right in um, and like it's going to offer because it's a very helpful tool. Would you like me to do any of this for you? Let's just skip that for now. And because
Okay.
we can always go back with Bolt and say, hey, we want to update this text or do that or whatever. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to go straight over to bolt.new. I'm logged in and I'm going to paste that in.
All right. And we
Um,
might do we need to increase the
yep.
size here too?
Yep.
There we go. Thank you.
So I'm just going to paste in exactly what we got from ChatGPT, and I'm going to say go. Now this is where this is the thing last Thanksgiving that really got me into vibe coding. If we
Hmm.
actually watch over here, it's already created all of these files.
Yeah.
Um, so it's already creating what you need to display this website, and it's writing these files. So
Yeah.
it's going to stream some of it to the UI, but it's been doing this since we submitted, and it's already telling us what it's going to do, how it's going to do it based on what we told it. It grabbed these hex codes. So these are just your
Mm.
color codes from the other website. And it says soft neutral color palette, which if we go to, where was it? Like if you looked at the preview before, or you go to
Yeah.
this web page, like
Yeah.
soft colors, lots of white space. It just grabbed that automatically because a lot of these tools have the ability to reach out to the internet. If they can't, they will tell you.
Hmm.
Um, and it's going to start building all of this. And all this is doing, so created initial files, install dependencies. These are just pieces of software that exist in open source, meaning it's free to use, that it is putting together. And those dependencies just save you a ton of time. If you were writing this code, you would pull these things in so that you don't have to write all of that other stuff. These are things like form builders, the calendar tooling, the timer information, things like that, and then
Mm.
npm install. What this is that npm is a node package manager. All that means is it helps manage these dependencies, pulling these files in, and it's installing it, meaning that it's pulling them down and making them available to your code. From there, it's just building these things out. And
Yeah.
so
And can I jump in here for a second?
Absolutely.
Because this was
Yeah.
a learning for me. And as somebody who's never used React, who's never used Tailwind, those were even just phrases that were just not even familiar to me. I didn't know what these components were, but I
Yeah.
will say that once it was built and I had to go into the code, like it was relatively straightforward. I was like, oh, I get it. Like a page is made up of components, and
Yep.
I can go into a component to look at the HTML in there. And so, I just want to encourage the folks on the call, like even if you haven't coded before, if you've got some HTML background, like don't be so intimidated that you're not going to go start navigating through this. I would say it's pretty hard to break and that this can help you fix things. Matt, I'd be curious about your reaction to that.
Oh no, it's great for that. So like let's do something really ignorant. I'm just gonna go and delete that part of that file and save it.
Whoopsie.
And immediately it detected that and it will show you the problems. And it's like, hey, there's something wrong in hero, which is our hero block at the top of the
Mhm.
page. And it's like I found this problem because after you saved it, it tries to rebuild the site. And it says this variable's not there. There's a problem. Should we try to fix it? You can go here and you can say attempt the fix, and it will actually go in and try to fix that problem. Now, if it's something as simple as just deleting something, you can just go in Command Z. But sometimes you put a tick mark or a bracket or something in the wrong
Mhm.
place. But here, look, it says, oh, that stuff's being used. Where did it go? It just put that code right back.
I mean, that is fabulous. I will say, and I'll tell that story later, I ran into an issue and I'll tell that story because I think it's an important story on what happens when we hit some dead ends with with the fixes.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say to that is whenever I have trouble, I get into an issue here. A lot of the tools actually have they have two modes. So they have a discussion mode, and then they have
Mm,
another mode where it's actually building. And so what I'll do when I get into trouble is that I'll actually go to the discussion mode and be like, hey, we've been trying to do this. Can you please explain the problem? Tell me
hmm.
what questions you have. I will let it run that. It'll give me the answer back. I will take it over to ChatGPT and paste it, and then ChatGPT will give me an answer.
Yeah.
So here, if I am let's say on the last issue, can you describe what you found? You can see my terrible typing, and what questions you had that led you to an answer.
Yeah.
And so I just like I'll just ask it questions like it's a developer that I'm working with, right? And on
Right.
discuss mode, you use fewer of your tokens than you would if you're on the agent coding version, and those tokens do matter. So
Yeah.
here, this is the issue that I found. I'm gonna just grab this,
Hmm.
go over to ChatGPT. I might even just keep this conversation going. Hey, in Bolt, I had an issue. It described it below. Can you help? Paste, go.
Yeah. And then it puts it in plain English.
Yep. And look,
Yeah.
this is the code that got replaced that I deleted.
Cool.
And like, you know, for this call, we set up this situation, but I literally randomly highlighted and deleted for the example, and it picked it up and fixed it right away.
Nice.
And so you can really go in and just mess up your code and it will be able to fix it. And if it can't, if it gets stuck or you see the same error a couple times, use
Hmm.
that example of what's happening, why, what questions do you have, and then go over and grab it and hand it to the other tool.
Oh, cool.
That works really well.
Well, I don't
Um,
want to keep people from the eye candy. Like it's all fun to see code, but let's, you know, let's keep going is what I'm saying.
Okay, all right. So there was one thing that you did mention, which is that the file names and the files themselves. So just really quickly, just as a rundown, the tools tend to default to like React and JavaScript, just because those are great front end things that people like to use and it makes life easy. These extensions, .ts is TypeScript. Um, TSX is going to be it's how they use the I forget what the X stands for, but typically like your components are going to have that TSX. I think it's like this is going to be included. It's sort of a I forget exactly what that means. But like JSON is interesting because these are always going to be formatted files. So they have these open brackets and then they have these key value pairs. Sometimes they're bigger objects. In this case, those dependencies that we talked about, that's what this file is for. You mentioned Tailwind, which is a CSS baseline. So it actually gives you a grid in your page. So you can say, I want 3 boxes across, and they already have tags that you use on the HTML to tell the page that this is going to be 3 boxes across. You don't have to build all of that. TS config tells you how to handle TypeScript. The really interesting ones here, like the hero that we broke, registration form, these are the processing, so
Hmm.
handling the actual submit of the form in this case, and the form HTML. So it will display this, and when you hit the button, the data will go through this code to handle what happens. And that's really nice because now, because this is a component, you could actually build 20 pages and reuse the same component in all of those pages, which makes everything more consistent. So that's
Right.
really nice.
And I want to, if you scroll down on the code,
Yeah.
this is more
Here.
my level. Yeah. So if you go down to where the text was, I just wanted to point out where it says you're registered
Yeah.
and check your email. So what I found, because they do charge by the prompt, is that sometimes it was helpful for me to go into this code
Mhm.
and just change those words in the code. Now, I know that Bolt charges a little bit differently than Lovable. Do you want to talk to that for a second?
Yeah, so the way that Bolt does it is that it actually keeps all of your code in context. And so when you actually go to make a change, it's like having every line of code in your brain at the same time. So because you're doing that, it's actually going to charge you more the bigger your project is. And so for stuff like this, it is a lot, it's like quote cheaper, even though the like tokens are pennies, but they add up quickly to go in and say like you're registered for a wall Pilates intro, right?
Mhm.
And so you can just make that change and then you can see that it says save. You can do Command S or hit the button and it'll save it. That
Mhm.
saves you a bunch of tokens, especially if you're going to do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So we've
Yep.
got questions building in the chat,
What do you got?
and I want to show people like what gets, yeah, the preview.
I know I keep putting it
So
off, right?
yeah, I know, like the
Yeah.
tension's building.
So this is what we have so far. So we have this very basic landing page. It has all the information. It's nice and big and easy to use. And then we can actually put an image here. So like Melissa, if we had a headshot, we could put that in. And what's really cool about Bolt is that you can either put the image in here and then it will put it in there, or you can drag an image in to the folder directory and it'll
Hmm.
handle it.
Do you want to
So
demo that just real
yeah,
quickly?
absolutely. I have an image of me. Okay, so what we'll do is for the instructor image, can you use the attached? And then I think, yeah, I can just drop it right there. So that's my image I use on LinkedIn. We'll say go. It puts it into a public directory, named the same as the file that I had, and it'll update that bio. And then hopefully when this should refresh here in just a second, and it will have that image right there.
Hmm.
And it's saying Sarah Mitchell because we didn't tell who we are, right?
Right.
And so you can go in and fix that content. So it's going to refresh here. Let's make sure to, yeah, there we go. Okay. And so now there I am, Sarah Mitchell, in all my glory.
Nice to
Uh,
meet you, Sarah.
yeah, and it put fake testimonials in here, very much like a designer would mock up the page because we
Yeah,
didn't give it any of that. And so if we
right.
didn't want testimonials, we could say take that out. If we do want it, we can say here are the testimonials we wanted, or we can paste that in.
Hmm.
It
And does this
also,
have,
go ahead.
I know on Lovable it has like a visual editor where you can just hit visual editor and then go into the front end, like the preview and tweak the text. Does this have something similar?
Um, I
Yeah,
oh,
just click there and then.
I haven't used this before. So it's letting me select it. I think what it's doing, yeah, so you can say like, hey, I don't like this.
Hmm.
If you want, so like I could be like, this, let's go here. Uh,
Hmm.
so this testimonial, can you make it from John Smith and talk about how he attended and loved the intro, even though it was targeted or what? And it'll go in and make that change.
Yeah. And then just to give folks a sense of some of the other platforms, like in Lovable, you can actually click on that on the front end preview and do some editing. I do feel like Lovable is probably made for even, I was about to say dumber coders like me, people who are less familiar with coding
Mhm.
and has that visual editing. I will say that I needed to include in my prompt to code it in a way where I could use what they call their visual editor.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so otherwise they didn't do that. So
See, there's
there was
John. He really loved the class.
that's awesome. So there was a great question in the chat too about security and
Yeah.
vulnerabilities.
Yeah, so that is one of the things that's come up with people who have built out full applications with vibe coding, is that if you are doing something with someone's personal information, or private information, that sort of a thing, you want to make sure that you tell the application that that's what you're doing. Um,
Mhm.
for something like this, where we're going to use the HubSpot API on the back end to send the data in, HubSpot will be owning that data and taking care of it for you, so it's less of an issue. Um, but you could do things like if you really wanted to, if you're worried about something, you could put a CAPTCHA right here and say,
Mhm.
add a CAPTCHA. I've built out applications where they've got, I'm using Clerk, which is like OAuth competitor to do logins and registration securely. It handles all of the authorization and permissions on the back end. And then in some of the one of the apps that I'm building, which is actually for vibe coders. I don't want to know anything about your project. And
Hmm.
so I asked it to, when you describe your project, make sure that it's always encrypted at motion, meaning when it's passing it back and forth to different APIs, and at rest, which is when I store it in the database. And
Okay.
that way, me as the owner of the site, I can't even see what your project is about because it's encrypted in a way that only works when you're logged in. And I can't log in as you, so I can't see it. So there are ways to do it. You can ask tools like ChatGPT or Bolt, like, I am concerned about security. What
Hmm.
suggestions do you have? And so I seriously, I treat this like a coworker. And I ask it questions, I test it, I ask it to test me. There are all kinds of things that you can do. And so here, look,
Nice.
make sure your data coming in, make sure you serve it on with a certificate on your website, keep your dependencies updated so you're not introducing problems. Um, there are other things that you can do.
Hmm.
And this is telling you, just basics that you can do. But then you can actually switch this off and say, go for it. And it
Oh,
will go and introduce those things. I don't know how long that would take, so I haven't tested that here. So I'm a
yeah.
little bit worried about doing it during our webinar, but you can do that.
Nice. Well, I love it. So there's also questions in the chat about deploying and hosting.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So here, Bolt has a way that you can deploy directly. One thing that is sort of a cheat code actually is that you can
Do you want to talk about deployment for those who aren't
absolutely.
coders and may not know what it means to deploy?
Yeah, and you asked me about that, and I just jumped right in answering the other question. So when you deploy, what that means is that you're putting it up on a server, which is a, virtual or real piece of hardware. Eventually, it's all real hardware, but we live in a world of virtualization. So we'll just call it a server, which is a place, it's basically an operating system that exists to make websites available online. You're going to push the code there and you're going to tell that server how to run your code. Um, what's really cool is that there are a lot of ways for you to do that without having to take those steps. And I'll show you one of them that I really like, especially for vibe coded websites. That is free as long as you're not doing anything, super intense. So something like a landing page or a browser only tool, it's free for that. The one I put in the chat A10D, that's all in the browser. There's no database on the back end, no crazy APIs or anything like that. And so it just does it in your browser. And so it's free to host that. Um, but so a server will serve your code. A lot of the tools will give you what's called like a temporary or a custom URL. So in the case of Vercel, the one I'll show you, they'll make up a prefix and it'll be something.vercel.com. But then you can actually point your domain at it with DNS, which is just how a domain is translated to an IP address on the internet. If you ever bought a domain, there's settings. You can ask ChatGPT how to do that with your host or with your registrar. It's very simple. Um, and then your actual domain will serve the website instead of that uh, temporary domain.
Yeah,
And so
so
I can show you all of that.
yeah, and I just want to add a little anecdote to that, which is I was vibe coding a landing page for a client, and we were just mocking up a section of their website. So they wanted to add 3, 4 pages to their website. So I vibe coded the 3 or 4 pages, and of course we didn't want to push it live to their website. So that's where it was
Right.
really handy to have that lovable URL that I could just send them. Here's the vibe coded version. And then they could look at it, their developer could look at it, the developer could look at the code, say, I can reuse this code or I can't reuse this code.
Yeah.
Like if I had any specs for the developer, like he's like, oh, I had code in these languages, I could potentially ask Lovable to recode those pages in those languages. And so it was just a really nice ability to share those pages without necessarily deploying. But if you do need to deploy, then what Matt's about to share is really helpful too.
So you just reminded me there's this really cool trick that works very well with the way we set this site up, which is that we are not ready for this site. to be publicly available. Can you please password protect it
Mm.
um, in a way that I can turn off when I'm ready? React and JavaScript have what's called a hook that you can turn this on really easily. It's actually like this component. And I use this for my clients. So I have two or three websites that are live right now that are just behind a password. Good luck guessing it. I give them the temporary URL and the password because they don't want people on the internet to be able to see it. And they can go and see it. They can play with it, see, and now we have a password.
Cool.
And let's see if it gives me the password. Yeah, preview 2025.
All right.
Uh, and so we'll be able to, as soon as it refreshes, paste that in, and now we can enter the site and play with it. And that, oh, thanks, LastPass. And that way you can actually keep this protected until you're ready for people to see it, whether it's on your website or not. And you could ask it to say, like, 1 week out from our event, undo the password, right? And it will put
Mm.
that logic in. So even if you don't want to go and change it, it'll handle that.
Hmm.
So on this part, I'm going to move a little bit quickly, but it's pretty simple. We're going to go to GitHub. We're going to create a
What it,
repository. So we're going to call
okay, so those
this,
were, well, you type, let me talk about GitHub and
yep,
repository. So
that'd be great.
GitHub is just a place where you can store your code. It pushes it up to a server, and a repository is just a container for that code. Is that a
Yep,
fair way of
that's
saying
exactly right.
this?
You
Okay.
get this database of code or a place to store your code, and then each repository is like a folder on your drive, basically. And so if you were to go to like my GitHub, you can see I've got a bunch of like public repositories. So these are different pieces of code. If you go to repositories, you'll see wall Pilates right there. That's
Cool.
the one we just created. And all of that code is there. And then what's really cool with Bolt is if I refresh this Bolt page, it's actually going to sync the data from GitHub right here from the repository because it has that connection now and it'll rerun it, which means that if you are like me and use two or three tools, you can actually use GitHub as the center point for everything you do. So you can go
Mhm.
use a different tool to mess with it, and then you come back to Bolt and it'll refresh, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last little bit of what I wanted to show you was if you go to Vercel.com, you can see my projects here. I've got a bunch of them. Um, and so we can go add a new project. Vercel is that host that we talked about. It's very simple. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to type in the name of that repository. Oh, I don't have it. I'll go to GitHub and you can actually give Vercel the you give it permission to very specific repositories that you have access to. And so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to scroll down to where my repositories are. I'm going to select one called Wall Pilates. I'm going to save that. Now it's available. It pops up. I'm going to hit import. So it's that simple. What's also really cool is Vercel was specifically built for JavaScript projects. So it auto detected how it's going to build. I don't have to change anything here. The one thing, let me double check one thing really quickly. Okay, so it actually hard coded the password. Sometimes you might have a env file. If you have a file called .env, that's called an
Mhm.
environment file. These are secrets that you're going to put on your server. So when we go to do the HubSpot integration and said, hey,
Mhm.
make sure this data goes over to HubSpot, it will reach out, get the HubSpot docs, it will do that integration for you, and then it'll create a .env file and tell you where to put your API key for HubSpot.
Mhm.
When you go to deploy, you would go and put that here and you would just say HubSpot API key.
Mhm.
And then I'm just going to write like my secret key.
Yeah.
Um, and you would save. And it will put this into the operating system of your website so that it's never
Mhm.
stored on your disk. It's only in Vercel where it's safe. So if anybody ever hacks your website or whatever, they can't get that password.
Nice. And so if anybody doesn't know the API, I think it's in popular lexicon now, but if not, API is just the way two systems start to connect and talk
Mhm.
to each other to exchange data and information.
So in the same way that you put like a URL in your browser, an API is a URL that your code uses, and it has a password, and then it has a payload. So it's sending this data in the right method to the server, and the server responds either unfavorably, like your password doesn't match, or I don't know what you're trying to do with me, or it will respond back with the response you're looking for. Oh, I took that data and changed it, or yeah, I got your data, thank you. And so then you can go forward, and your code can do that in the background. So when you submit the form for HubSpot, the code on your server will take that form data and that processing code we talked about. It will make the API call over to HubSpot. HubSpot will respond and say, got it. And then the form will turn over and say, thank you for your submission.
Nice.
And your code can all handle that for you.
So we've got one final question in the chat. I'm sure there's other questions. And then we've got a couple slides to close us out. This has been really amazing. And I've just enjoyed watching it come to life. The final question in the chat is, have you connected any AI agents into a vibe coded app?
I absolutely have. One of the best ways to do that actually is to actually go to ChatGPT and say like, I want to add an AI chat with GPT. What are we calling it? 4.0 behind the scenes on the webinar form page that will answer questions about wall Pilates only. If it See if it gets any other questions, it should say, I don't know. See all my misspellings, all my bad typing, it handles all of that. Great. Um, and you can just tell it that you want to do this. It'll tell you like what the prompt is that you want to do. This just gave me the code for how to do it.
Wow.
And so like I could actually, if I wanted to, I could go in and drop this into Bolt where these are, and then just I would tell Bolt like, hey, I put these two files in. Can you make sure this works? And it will set
Hmm.
that up, drop your API key in for OpenAI, and then you can test it right there on the site.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like we could have a 3 hour session here
Oh,
because
I
I
do
feel like we
this.
have, go
Yeah, I do
ahead.
this all day, every day. So this
Yeah.
is just, yeah. So here's the site, and you all can go to it and check it out. It's not hooked up to HubSpot. We didn't do that part yet, but it's as easy as saying, um, you know, connect the form to HubSpot, please, and it will go and do that.
Yeah. And then just for other people, I've also done it where I've built the form, a HubSpot form, and then I've dropped the embed code onto the site.
Yep.
And
So
then
here are
it's just,
those. These are those environment variables we were talking about. And so what we would do is we like here it's offering to hard code it, which is not ideal, frankly, because then it's in your code. But you could just say, hey, pull the spot bars into a .env file.
yeah.
Yep. And then you can then pass it with Vercel or whoever you host with. But
All
yeah, this
right.
is stuff. This is stuff that you can spend. You go down the rabbit hole. I've seen the coolest apps. Somebody built out an application for image editing. He did it in an afternoon, and he uses it every day at work.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's all good stuff. We haven't even talked about what happens if things go wrong. Drop in the chat if that would be an interesting follow on to this to this session. We didn't have time to be like, what have you vibe coded? But I did want to share that we do have some upcoming events. So the next one, we're talking about deep research for marketers. And these are the deep research tools. How can you make those effective in your life? How can you use them as a marketer? How do you set them up? And how do you do prompts for them? And then in August, we're going to be talking about what's going to happen to the jobs. So there is all this fear mongering going on. And I would like to debunk some of the fear mongering and really have a healthy conversation about what's going to happen to the job. We do have some precedent out there. I know AI feels like it's unprecedented, but there's things like factory automation, there's things like DevOps where we've seen the Autobots come in, and we know what generally happens to the job, what happens to the jobs. So if you'd like to get in touch with Matt, here is his information. Here's some of the coded sites he's built. Take a little screenshot of that. South Denver Plumber, love it. Um, and
Melissa, I
keep
don't
it.
think you're sharing.
Oh no,
It's all
I
good.
thought I was.
Yeah, South Denver
Yes.
Plumber was a buddy of mine. He wants to go on his own. And I was
Mhm.
like, I'm building you a website. And I knocked it together for him based on the door hanger that he sent me an image of. Gave that to Bolt and said, make a website out of that. And it did.
Nice. All right. Well, here's our LinkedIn if you'd like to stay in touch. And hopefully I'm sharing at this point.
Yep.
And let me just back up to Matt's QR code if you'd like to stay in touch with him. And thank you so much for attending. A pleasure to be here and hope it was a valuable use of your hour. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We're always, you can tell we're passionate about this, so we're happy to chat.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Melissa. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Such a pleasure. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great day.
I feel like you're right. I could just go on and on and on and, go as deep as anybody wanted on this stuff. It's a ton of fun, but man, there's so much there.
There's so much there. You only realize that when you start doing it on um, and we
Like,
will send the recording
yeah.
link on the meetup. There was a question. So thanks for that question, Daisy.
And I really appreciate your questions too. Kept me honest on some of that stuff. So thank you for that.
Yeah. All right. I am going to end the session for everybody. Thanks for staying on, and hopefully we'll see you at a future event.
See you later.
Take care.